With his New York hush money criminal trial taking a break for the weekend, former President Donald Trump is in Florida. He's meeting with top Republican donors and potential running mates at the annual RNC spring retreat near his Florida home. CNN's Elena Treen joining us now from Palm Beach. Elena, good to see you. So what do we know about Trump's plans for the weekend?
Right. Well, Fred, they're wrapping up now a fundraiser being held at his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach. When I've talked to people, they said, Lara Trump, his daughter-in-law, and she's a co-chair of the RNC, as well as the RNC chairman, Michael Whatley. They were some of the featured speakers alongside Donald Trump. And a lot of people in the room, as you mentioned, who could potentially be one of Donald Trump's vice presidential picks. People like Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, two of his former Republican primary challengers, Tim Scott and Doug Burgum, all of them in the room brushing shoulders with the former president this weekend. And I do just want to be clear, though, Fred, when I speak to Donald Trump's team, they insist that he's still a long ways away from deciding who his running mate is going to be. They expect that decision to be made closer to the Republican National Convention in July. However, it's still a really good opportunity for them to brush shoulders with the former president and show him his support. Now, another interesting figure who is also here this weekend at the RNC retreat in Palm Beach, they're all staying at the Four Seasons, is South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. And of course, she has been at the center of a lot of headlines lately over some of the excerpts in her book, including one excerpt where she describes shooting and killing her dog. She's been trying to do damage control for the last week or so around that, and she's here as well. And so I'm eager to hear what that reception has been like and hoping to bring you some more of that news later today.
Okay, I think everyone's intrigued to hear about that as well. Elena Treen, thank you so much. All right, on Monday, Donald Trump will return to a New York courtroom as testimony in his hush money trial continues. The second week of testimony wrapped up on Friday with a day of dramatic testimony from one of his top former officials, Hope Hicks. The former White House communications director looked noticeably uncomfortable as she avoided eye contact with her former boss. While on the stand, she described the fallout from the Access Hollywood tape and the Trump White House response to stories about hush money payments. And after a key moment in her testimony, she began crying. Joining me right now to talk more about the trial is CNN legal analyst Jennifer Rogers. She is a former federal prosecutor. Jennifer, great to see you. So let me start with that dramatic moment where Hope Hicks started to cry on the witness stand. How might that impact a jury?
Well, I think, Fred, really the issue is that she was very believable. I think that her discomfort, she started crying at the end of the direct examination before she was asked any questions on cross. And most people who were in the room who I've heard relay what happened said that it seemed like she just kind of realized she had said some things that could hurt her former mentor and the former president, Donald Trump. And so she was emotional about that. So I think the jury is going to look at her in a human way and say she was emotional. She didn't want to hurt his prospects, but she's here telling the truth. So I think it will go over well in terms of their view of her as a witness. I think they will believe her.
Mm-hmm. So it just helped convey that she felt conflicted, right? She knew that she is compelled to tell the truth, but she perhaps is still demonstrating she has a certain allegiance to the former president, still very much, likes him, but she's not the one on trial. He is. So did she say anything there that was particularly incriminating that perhaps her testimony helped the prosecution?
So it was a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. She's claimed not to have memory of exact verbatim things that she had heard, like she had some access to the August 2015 meeting between Trump and David Pecker and Michael Cohen, where they kind of set out this plan to try to help the campaign by catching and killing if it came to that, but keeping an ear out for negative stories. She overheard some conversations between Trump and Cohen about these issues when the Karen McDougal news came out and when the Stormy Daniels news came out, but she didn't really give a lot of details. But what helped the prosecution was a couple of things. One was just hearing about it from the campaign side, the furor that erupted when the Access Hollywood tape came out and how nervous and concerned they all were about anything else coming out in those weeks before before the election. That was a perspective we hadn't gotten before. She confirmed that Donald Trump was talking to people, especially Michael Cohen, who was the architect of this scheme and was the one getting it done. And she did confirm also, although she also said that he did care about what Melania thought, but she confirmed that this really was all about the campaign, that is what they were concerned about when it comes to these issues that he had with women coming publicly to talk about relationships that they had had with him.
So she helped establish those things, but the prosecution needs to be able to establish or argue that those payments, were not handled properly, which is where the crime is. Is her testimony helping the prosecution establish that a crime was committed?
It is not. She was not involved in any of the bookkeeping of the Trump organization. She was clear that she was on the campaign side, and then in the White House, she doesn't have anything to say about the underlying crime charged of the fraudulent financial documents. Her involvement was on the second crime, if you will, the election interference conspiracy that enhances that first crime into a felony. So she was helpful on that end, but you're right, Fred, nothing on the fraudulent financial documents. And in fact, we haven't heard much about that at all. None of the witnesses to date have really tackled that issue. I expect we'll start to hear about that this week.
All right, Jennifer Rogers, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thanks.